Hello, my name is Derek Scott. I'm a registered social worker, certified IFS therapist, and I made a brief video to help you get to know yourself better. Um, as you may be aware, the understanding now of the personality is that there's a whole bunch of parts of us. It's not just one personality. And that's pretty radical. On top of that, there's you at your core, who you are, your true self. And that true self that we'll share has certain qualities, which I'm going to list on the side here. Now, you may not identify with that. You may not identify with those qualities. That's okay. The different parts of us don't necessarily embody those qualities. But we can always come back to that core of us, and we can get to know those different parts of us. Now, I know this might sound radical, but stay with me for a bit. This is based on the internal family systems model of therapy developed by Richard Schwartz, to whom we owe a huge debt. So if this is who you are at your core, how come you're not always acting like that in the world? Well, that's because the different parts of us can get defensive and protective, and they can take the lead, and they can, what we call, blend, right? So if I've got a really angry part that's up, and it's just really, really angry, it will feel like I am angry. That's all I ever am. I'm just angry. Of course, I'm not always angry. I might similarly have a very sad part that's up. I'm so sad about what happened, blah, blah, blah. And this doesn't feel like a part of me. This feels like me. I'm so sad. And of course, I'm not sad all the time. So how can we get to know those different parts of us better? How can we unblend from those parts? And can we bring some of those qualities of ourselves to those parts of us? So one way of doing that is to draw a map, simply draw a map of the different parts of you. You're probably used to thinking of them as thoughts and feelings, but those are parts of you that have those thoughts. Those are parts of you that have those feelings. If you can get that, and if you can start to identify them, things begin to shift in a pretty powerful and wonderful way, really. Because there's more of you available, both for your parts and for the people in your life. When I teach this model to mental health professionals, I invite them to do this exercise. And one of my students has let me use her parts map. And what she did was she focused on when she gets into conflict with her partner, and then to see what parts of her come up in that conflict. So I'm going to share that with you. And as you're looking at this parts map, notice if you have similar parts. You may, or you may have very different parts. But these are the ones that come up for her. When you put them on the paper, if you choose to do this, you may notice a number of things. So just, if you're going to do it, just do it, just out of your own curiosity. When I look at this map, I see a number of, obviously, the parts that she's named, right, that she's familiar with. And as you keep looking at it, you might notice that there seem to be relationships between them. Right? So if you do your own map, you can do it about being in conflict with someone. You can just do it in terms of the parts that you already know about that you love. Maybe a part that gets you to yoga, maybe a part that likes dancing, maybe a part that likes cooking. Those can be different parts of you. They are. And then if you make this map, you can look at them and notice, right? Oh, that pleaser part seems to be running towards self, almost like it wants something from self. And this is what I was sharing with my student, and my student was unaware of these. So some of these are my interpretations, but they landed well for her, and some didn't land at all, which is fine, right? But it's worth having a look to see, do the parts know about each other? The frustrated part on the left can very easily turn into anger. Right? But notice that the colors of the anger look very similar to the colors of self. Kind of interesting, right? Self is very grounded. It's got a lot of ground under it. So does hate, right? So they both look like they're grounded in a way that some of the others are not. The helpless child looks kind of similar to the dissociated part on the top left. They're both kind of bubbly, and neither of them seem to be looking at self or aware that self is available for them. The warrior looks a little like Pigpen from the Charlie Brown cartoons to me, if you know that character. But the warrior The scared, see how little that scared one is? It's probably just a kid. And the worthless and depressed ones and the helpless child, they're all close to each other. So there's probably some similarities there. And parts often go back to being very young, especially the ones that are having a hard time, right? Ones that worry, ones that feel worthless. So you can notice these ones look younger. And if you're doing this by yourself, you might be surprised to notice that some of these parts are very young, maybe have been around for a very long time. The part that's under the self, which she labeled as withdrawn, likes to withdraw from the arguments and the conflicts. It also looks like it wants to go for a walk in the woods, maybe replenish, maybe spend some alone time, maybe get some nurturance. What she was aware of was that the hate would fuel the anger, and then it would turn into that righteous judgment. So if you look to the left of self, there's all those parts in a column, right? Then leading up to flight. I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to leave the relationship. So those are all connected in a kind of ladder, as it seemed to me. Then she's got Superwoman on top of that mountain, right? Above self, working really hard, close to the pleaser, doing its best to do all of the tasks that it possibly can as well as it can. It's exhausting. There's a part of you doing that all the time. It's exhausting. So why is it helpful? Why is it valuable to do this? Because if you're doing this and then you're coming from your self energy in the middle there, you can get curious about these different parts of you. And this might sound a little odd, but you can ask them about themselves if your curiosity is available to you. That worthless part that's depressed, we're not born with that. Babies don't get depressed. Babies don't feel worthless. So that means somewhere along the line, there's been a message. Something's been picked up around I'm worthless. You probably were shamed as a kid. Parents often shame their kids. It's almost awful to be on the receiving end of that. But some part of us might take it on. I'm worthless. Get curious about the angry part. How come it's so mad? Every part of us has a positive intent. And if we can recognize that, then it's easier to get curious about them and it's easier to welcome them because these are yours. Somebody's got to love them. It might as well be you. Angry parts often protecting more vulnerable parts. That angry part might be flaring up because the scared part got triggered. There's something scary about what happened in the relationship. So the response is anger. And you probably notice for yourself when you get mad, when you're righteous in your anger, if you just pause and get curious about that angry part of you, underneath, there's often a vulnerable part. And the other value of this is when you're able to notice these different parts of you and unblend, they separate out from you so that you've got the clarity about them, there's more of yourself available, more of your self energy available. And that's nice. Right? You can notice, oh, part of me got mad. Part of me worries about stuff. Okay, notice that. It's not all of me. And I can kind of hold steady knowing that I have those parts. And what my student was able to do was share this with her partner. And her partner said, yeah, I actually know all of those parts. And it led to a really fruitful conversation between the two of them about what happens when they get into a fight, how some of these parts that have been there for years get triggered because they're trying to get her attention and she gets all mad and judgy and threatens to leave. And it's all connected to that vulnerability that got triggered. And that helped her partner to understand her better, helped her to understand her own system better. And hopefully their relationship will be easier, smoother. In the intimacy of relationships, that's where these parts of us can get triggered. And if we don't know that that's what's going on, we don't know what to do with them, then we just bounce around from being, I'm really worried and I'm really mad and, I have every right to judge you and I'll just keep trying harder and bouncing from one to the other when we can settle and go, oh, hey, what are you worried about? How come you're so scared? What's your story? What do you need to tell me? So you might want to try this on. You might want to do a journaling exercise. You can write from part to part. You can write from yourself to your parts, all sorts of ways that we can work with this. But the key piece is having these different parts of us separate out in some way. Sometimes you can just do that internally, right? Oh, I noticed that I've got a teaching part that's hoping that this is going to be useful for people and that I'm saying things in the right way. Okay, that's a part of me. Just dropped in and noticed it. And now I'm just letting it know how much I appreciate it. And that's that gratitude piece. If you can bring your appreciations to the different parts of you that are working so hard, and then look for the relationships between them. Right? Some parts don't like other parts, right? So you might say, I don't like that angry part. Well, dislike is not one of those qualities of your core self. So put that down as a part that doesn't like the angry part. It doesn't have to. It's got its reasons why it doesn't like its angry part, but it doesn't have to be you. In fact, it's not. It's another part. So we have all sorts of relationships between these parts. That's called a polarity. And two parts don't like each other. There are alliances, just like in any family, just like in any system of people, any group of people. This is part of what makes it so wonderful to be in the world with people that have all these different parts, and parts that I don't have, my neighbors have. I don't have gardening parts, right? But I do have teaching parts. Right? So that's one of the roles I can have in our shared global culture. Right? And the people with the gardening parts do their thing, which I'm so appreciative of. And all the different skill sets that we can share with each other and own as a worldwide community. Just so good. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope it makes sense. If you are a mental health professional and you'd like to learn how to work with this as a therapeutic model, then you're welcome to take one of my courses. And if you're not, if you're just someone who's not a mental health professional, then I hope this is helpful. And maybe you can share it with your friends and just have a cup of coffee and a chat about it, because this is how we understand the personality to be right now. And it's so much more helpful than the other models that have tried to fit everything into one personality. Because what's true here is you exist at the center there. That is you at your core. You are inherently good. And things that happen to us in life that we take on as burdens, right? I'm worthless. I worry all the time. I'm frightened, right? When that happens, other parts of us come in to try and protect those parts of us. And those might be the parts that get angry, judgmental, right? The parts that are not socially approved of, that use substances, that all manner of things, right? But the truth is, stuff's happened to you. Your parts have, had to take on the connected stuff connected to the stuff that's happened to you, and other parts have helped you cope. And some parts don't like the way they've helped you cope, and that's fine. Right? But this is all about, at your core, you're inherently good. You were born that way. You are that way. That can get covered up by these parts. When they unblend, it becomes available to you. So there's nothing wrong with you or me or any of us. And stuff's happened to you. Parts have helped you cope. Might as well get to know them. Okay, that's it.